The penthouse in Gangnam was everything their cramped apartment in Yeongdeungpo-gu was not. Floor-to-ceiling windows that made the city look like a carpet of stars. Rooms, actual separate rooms with doors that closed. A kitchen with appliances Beauty had only seen in magazines. Bathrooms with tubs deep enough to swim in. Space. So much space that when Chitty and Amara first walked in, they stood frozen in the entryway, afraid to move, afraid to touch anything, afraid this was some kind of dream they'd wake up from. "This is temporary," Beauty said firmly, her arms crossed over her chest as she stood in the massive living room that could have fit their entire apartment 3 times over. "Just until we figure things out." Kang Min-yi stood near the window, looking uncomfortable in his own home, which was almost funny, except nothing about this situation was funny. He'd insisted they stay here after the press conference 3 days ago, after the media had swarmed their apartment building like locusts, after Beauty had found photographers camping outside Chitty and Amara's school, after the threats started coming. "Take as long as you need," Min-yi said quietly. "There's no rush, you're safe here." Safe? Beauty almost laughed. She didn't feel safe. She felt like a charity case, like someone who'd been rescued when she'd spent 5 years refusing to need rescuing. The check he'd given her was still in her purse, uncashed, because accepting it felt like admitting defeat, like confirming every ugly thing his mother had said about her. "Iyama," Amara whispered, tugging on her sleeve. "Is this really where we're staying?" "Temporarily," Beauty repeated, softer now. "Just for a little while." But Chitty was already exploring, his analytical mind cataloging everything. "There are 4 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, a study with a computer setup that's more advanced than the school library. The internet speed is..." He pulled out his cracked phone, running a speed test, 20 times faster than our apartment. "We could download entire textbooks in seconds." "Chitty," Beauty said warningly, but Min-yi was already moving toward them. "You can each have your own room," he said, and there was something careful in his voice, like he was afraid of saying the wrong thing. "If you want, or you can share, whatever makes you comfortable." The twins looked at each other, that silent communication passing between them. "Our own rooms," Amara said slowly, like the concept was foreign. "We've never had our own rooms." "Then maybe it's time you did," Min-yi said. Beauty watched her children's faces light up with a hope that made her chest ache. They shouldn't have to be amazed by basic things like separate bedrooms and working internet. They shouldn't look at a bathtub like it was a luxury instead of a necessity. But they did, because she had failed them, because no matter how hard she worked, it had never been enough. "Can we see them?" Chitty asked, already moving toward the hallway. Min-yi led them down the corridor, opening doors. The first room was decorated in soft blues and grays, with a desk by the window, bookshelves waiting to be filled, and a bed that looked like a cloud. The second room was similar but in warm earth tones. Both had computers. Both had space. Both had everything 2 9-year-olds could need. Amara walked into the second room slowly, touching the desk, the chair, the bookshelf, like she was afraid they'd disappear. "This is really for us." "It's yours," Min-yi said, "for as long as you need it." Chitty was already at the computer, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "The processing power on this is incredible. I could run complex simulations. We could work on our AI project without the lag we always get at the library." Beauty stood in the doorway, watching her son's excitement, her daughter's wonder, and felt something crack inside her. This was what they deserved. This was what she'd wanted to give them but never could. And now this man, this stranger who was also their father, was giving it to them effortlessly, with money he probably didn't even miss. Welcome to K-Fairytale Stories, besties. Kindly show your encouragement by hitting the like and subscribe button. It would mean a lot to me. "Beauty," Min-yi said quietly, appearing beside her. "Can we talk?" She followed him back to the living room, her defenses already up. "If this is about money..." "It's not," he interrupted. "It's about them, about you, about all of this." He gestured vaguely at the penthouse. "I know this is uncomfortable, I know you didn't want this, but the media isn't going to stop, not yet, and I can't." His voice cracked slightly. "I can't let them hurt you, any of you, not when I have the means to protect you." "I don't need your protection," Beauty said, but even she could hear how hollow it sounded. "I've been taking care of us for 5 years." "I know," Min-yi said, and there was something raw in his eyes. "And I hate that you had to. I hate that I wasn't there. I hate that my children grew up in a one-room apartment while I lived in places like this. I hate all of it, but I can't change the past. I can only try to do better now." Beauty looked away, blinking back tears she refused to shed in front of him. "Your mother was right about one thing. This is a scandal. Being associated with us, it's damaging your reputation." "I don't care about my reputation," Minyi said fiercely. "I care about them, about keeping them safe, about giving them the life they should have had from the beginning." "And what about me?" Beauty asked, the question bursting out before she could stop it. "Where do I fit in your neat solution? Am I just the inconvenient mother you have to tolerate to have access to your children?" Minyi stepped back like she'd slapped him. "Is that what you think, that I'm tolerating you?" "What else am I supposed to think?" Beauty's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "You don't know me. We spent one night together 5 years ago, one night. And now we're supposed to what? Play house, pretend we're a family." "I don't know what we're supposed to do," Minyi admitted, running his hand through his hair in frustration. "I don't have a manual for this, but I know I want to try, not just for them. He stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. "Just let me help, please." Before Beauty could respond, Chitty appeared in the doorway. "Iyama, the bathtub is huge. Can we take a bath, a real bath? We haven't been able to since." He stopped, suddenly aware he was revealing too much about their previous living conditions. Beauty's throat tightened. Their apartment had only had a tiny shower that barely worked, and even that had broken last month. They'd been washing with a bucket. "Of course, baby, go ahead." As Chitty ran off, Beauty sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. Minyi sat carefully on the opposite end, maintaining distance. "They're amazing," he said quietly. "Your children are children. They're the most remarkable kids I've ever met." "They are," Beauty agreed, some of the fight draining out of her. "They're brilliant and brave and so much better than I ever dreamed they could be." "Because of you," Minyi said. "You did that. You raised them alone, kept them safe, made them into these incredible human beings. I had nothing to do with it." Beauty looked at him then, really looked at him. He wasn't wearing a suit today, just jeans and a simple shirt, and he looked younger somehow, more uncertain. "They wanted to know you," she said softly. "I never badmouthed you to them. I told them you didn't know about them, that if you had known, things might have been different. I don't know if that's true, but I wanted them to have the possibility of you. Does that make sense?" "It does," Minyi said, his voice rough. "And for what it's worth, it would have been different. If I'd known, I would have moved heaven and earth to find you." "Would you?" Beauty challenged. "Really? Or is that just what you tell yourself now?" Minyi was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know," he said finally, honestly. 5 years ago, I was different, more ambitious, more selfish, more focused on building the company. But I think I want to believe that I would have done the right thing, that I would have been there." The honesty disarmed her. Beauty had expected excuses, justifications, but not this raw admission of uncertainty. Over the next week, a routine emerged. Beauty insisted on cooking. It was the one thing she could control, the one way she could contribute. So the sterile penthouse kitchen came alive with the smells of jollof rice, egusi soup, and kimchi jjigae, a fusion that made the children laugh with delight. Minyi came home earlier than he ever had in his life, drawn by something he couldn't name, sitting at the dining table while Beauty cooked and the children did homework. "Can you help me with this?" Chitty asked one evening, sliding his mathematics textbook toward Minyi. "It's a problem about probability distributions and I can't figure out the third step." Minyi looked at the advanced calculus problem, work that most high school students would struggle with, and felt a surge of pride. "Sure, let's think about it logically. What do we know?" Beauty watched from the kitchen as Minyi patiently worked through the problem with Chitty, not giving him the answer, but guiding him to find it himself. Watched as Amara joined them, asking questions about coding that Minyi answered with enthusiasm. Watched as her children engaged with their father like it was the most natural thing in the world. And she felt something shift inside her, some of the anger and resentment making room for something more complicated. This was what they deserved. This attention, this patience, this easy access to knowledge and resources. Minyi wasn't trying to buy their affection. He was genuinely interested in them, in their minds, in who they were. "Iyama, come sit with us," Amara called, and Beauty found herself joining them at the table, Minyi making room for her without comment. For a moment, they looked like a family, and it terrified her. The peace lasted exactly 9 days. Beauty's phone started buzzing first. Text messages from numbers she didn't recognize, emails flooding her inbox, and then the calls. The offers from tabloid shows wanting interviews. The threats from people who thought she was a gold digger, a schemer, someone who had trapped poor Kang Minyi with her African wiles and foreign children. The worst part wasn't the strangers. It was the clients. The freelance translation work she'd built up over 5 years, the clients who had trusted her, they started canceling. Polite emails about restructuring and going in a different direction that couldn't hide the real message. They didn't want to be associated with the scandal. Within a week, Beauty had lost 80% of her income. She didn't tell Minyi, didn't tell anyone, just watched her carefully built financial independence crumble while she smiled and cooked dinner and pretended everything was fine. But the children knew. Of course they knew. They were too smart not to notice. "The kids at school are talking," Amara said one night at dinner, her voice small. "About us, about you and Iyama. They're saying mean things." Minyi's jaw tightened. "What kind of things?" Chidi and Amara exchanged glances. "That Iyama trapped you," Chidi said quietly. "That were not really yours. That she's a—" He stopped, unable to repeat the racial slurs. "Bad things about her being Nigerian, about us being mixed." Beauty felt ice flood her veins. Her children. Her beautiful, brilliant children were being poisoned by this, by her choices, by circumstances beyond their control. "That's enough," Minyi said, standing abruptly. "We're fixing this, now." "You can't fix racism with money," Beauty said bitterly. "No," Minyi agreed. "But I can stop letting people think they can attack my family without consequences." The press conference was held 2 days later at JK Technologies headquarters. Beauty had refused to attend. She wouldn't be paraded around like evidence. But she watched from the penthouse with the children, their hands clasped tightly in hers. Minyi stood at the podium in a sharp suit, his face that familiar Ice Prince mask, but his eyes burned with something fierce. "I'm here to address the rumors and speculation regarding my personal life," he began. 9 days ago, I was reunited with my children, 9-year-old twins Chidi and Amara, and their mother, Beauty Okonkwo. I want to be absolutely clear about several things. He paused, making eye contact with the cameras. "First, these children are mine. Biologically, legally, and in every way that matters. DNA tests confirm a 99.9% probability of paternity. Anyone suggesting otherwise is not only wrong but will face legal action for defamation." Beauty's breath caught. He was really doing this, publicly claiming them. "Second," Minyi continued, his voice hardening, "Beauty Okonkwo is not a gold digger, a schemer, or any of the other vile things being said about her. She is a woman who raised our children alone for 5 years after I failed to maintain contact following our brief relationship. She never asked me for money. She never sought me out. Our children found me on their own initiative. Beauty has worked tirelessly to provide for them, often holding 2 jobs, facing discrimination and hardship in a country that wasn't always welcoming to her. She is one of the strongest, most capable people I've ever met, and she deserves respect, not harassment." On the screen, Minyi's expression softened slightly. "Third, regarding the questions about my previously reported infertility, yes. I was diagnosed with a condition that made natural conception extremely unlikely. My children's existence is, medically speaking, miraculous, but miracles happen. Science isn't always absolute, and I'm grateful beyond words for this impossible gift." He leaned forward, his voice dropping but somehow more powerful. "Finally, to the media outlets and individuals who have been harassing Beauty, who have been targeting our children at their school, who have been sending threats and spreading lies, I'm putting you on notice. I have retained the best legal team in Korea. Every defamatory article, every threatening message, every invasion of privacy will be documented and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. My children deserve to grow up in peace. Their mother deserves to live without fear, and I will use every resource at my disposal to ensure that happens." He straightened, buttoning his jacket. "I won't be taking questions. This statement stands as the complete truth. Anyone who continues to spread false narratives will hear from my lawyers. Thank you. As he walked away from the podium, ignoring the shouted questions, Beauty found tears streaming down her face. Amara wrapped her arms around her mother's waist. He meant it, she whispered. He really meant it. Yeah, Beauty managed, her voice breaking. He did. The press conference helped. Public opinion began to shift, at least in some quarters. The most reputable news outlets stopped referring to Beauty as the mystery woman and started using her name with respect. Some of the hate mail stopped. Some. But the damage at the children's school was done. Despite Minnie's warnings, photographers still lurked near the gates. Other parents complained about the media attention. The administration suggested, politely but firmly, that perhaps Chitty and Amara would be more comfortable elsewhere. They're kicking us out, Chitty said flatly, reading the letter that had come home. They don't want the publicity. Minnie was at the penthouse when they got the news. He read the letter once, his expression darkening, then picked up his phone. Jae-hoon, I need information on the best international schools in Seoul. Private, excellent security, experience with high-profile families. Have a list by morning. You don't have to, Beauty started, but Minnie cut her off gently. Yes, I do. Our children shouldn't suffer because of who their parents are. They deserve the best education available in an environment where they're protected and valued. I can't afford private school, Beauty said, adding how small her voice sounded. You don't have to, Minnie said simply. I do. They're my children too. Let me do this, please. Beauty wanted to argue, wanted to maintain her independence, but she was so tired. Tired of fighting, tired of struggling, tired of watching her children pay for circumstances they didn't create. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Seoul International Academy was everything their previous school wasn't. Manicured grounds, state-of-the-art facilities, small class sizes, and security that rivaled a presidential residence. More importantly, half the students came from high-profile families, diplomats, celebrities, corporate executives. Scandal wasn't shocking here. It was Tuesday. Chitty and Amara thrived immediately. Within a month, Chitty had joined the robotics team and was already leading projects. Amara discovered a talent for debate and had made the varsity team despite being younger than everyone else. They came home excited about classes, about friends, about opportunities that had never existed at their old school. I got accepted to the Advanced AI Research Group, Chitty announced one evening, his eyes shining. There are only 10 students in the whole school. We're going to compete nationally next spring. That's amazing, baby, Beauty said, pulling him into a hug. And I won my first tournament, Amara added. Chess, I beat a 12th grader in the finals. Minnie, who had started joining them for dinner most nights, grinned. I'm not surprised. You're both incredible. Watching them, watching her children blossom with resources and opportunity, Beauty should have felt happy. And she did. But underneath the happiness was a growing frustration that gnawed at her constantly. She had no income. The freelance work had dried up completely. Every penny she spent came from the check Minnie had given her, which she'd finally cashed because pride didn't pay for groceries. She was living in his penthouse, eating food bought with his money, watching her children attend a school she couldn't afford. She had become exactly what she'd always feared, dependent. You're quiet tonight, Minnie observed one evening after the children had gone to bed. They'd fallen into a habit of sitting in the living room after dinner, ostensibly to discuss the children, but increasingly just talking about everything and nothing. Just thinking, Beauty said, curled up on one end of the couch with tea. About. She hesitated, then decided honesty was easier than pretense. I lost all my clients, every single one. The scandal, the publicity, no one wants to work with me anymore. Minnie set down his own cup carefully. I didn't know. Why didn't you tell me? What would you have done? Beauty asked tiredly. You're already paying for everything. The school, this place, food, clothes, everything. I've become a kept woman in my own life. That's not. It is, Beauty interrupted. I appreciate everything you've done, for the children especially, but I need to work. I need to contribute. I need to be more than just the mother of your children. Minnie was quiet for a long moment. What if you worked for me? Beauty blinked. What? JK Technologies is expanding into African markets, Minyi said, leaning forward. We need someone who understands the cultural nuances, who speaks the languages, who can bridge that gap. You're fluent in English, Igbo, Korean, and from what the kids said, you're learning Mandarin too. You have translation experience, cultural knowledge, and you're brilliant. I've seen it in how you've raised Chitty and Amara. You're offering me a job, Beauty said slowly, at your company. I'm offering you a position that needs filling, Minyi corrected. Yes, you're the mother of my children, but you're also qualified. Overqualified, actually. And it would be a real job with a real salary, not charity. You'd have your own office, your own projects, your own team. You'd be contributing to the company's expansion in a meaningful way. Beauty studied him, looking for pity or obligation, but found only sincerity. You're serious. Completely, think about it. You don't have to decide now. But Beauty, he hesitated, then continued, you're not just the mother of my children. You're an intelligent, capable woman who deserves to use her skills. Let me help you do that. Not because I owe you, because it's good business, and because I think you'd be exceptional at it. For the first time in weeks, Beauty felt something loosen in her chest. Hope, maybe, or possibility. I'll think about it, she said quietly. That's all I ask. Later that night, after Minyi had left and the penthouse was quiet, Beauty stood at the window looking out at Seoul. The city glittered below her, full of lights and life and possibilities she was only beginning to imagine. Behind her, in their separate rooms with their computers and books and space to grow, her children slept peacefully, safe and secure for the first time in their lives. And somewhere in this complicated, messy, unexpected situation, Beauty realized something had shifted. She wasn't sure when it had happened. Maybe during those dinners when Minyi patiently helped with homework. Maybe when he'd stood at that podium and defended her to the world. Maybe in the quiet moments when he looked at their children with such obvious love and wonder. But somewhere along the way, Kang Minyi had stopped being the stranger who had abandoned her and started becoming something else. Not quite a partner. Not yet. But maybe, possibly with time. Her phone buzzed. A text from Minyi. Forgot to mention, Jaehoon is sending over information about the position tomorrow. No pressure, but I hope you'll consider it. The kids are lucky to have you, and I think JK Technologies would be too. Beauty found herself smiling as she typed back. I'll look at it. Thank you, for everything. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, you don't have to thank me. This is what family does. Family, the word hung in the air, full of promise and uncertainty. They weren't there yet. There was still so much to figure out, so many conversations to have, so many obstacles to overcome. His mother still hated her. The public scrutiny hadn't disappeared entirely. The children were thriving, but they were also navigating a new world with new pressures. But for the first time since Chitty and Amara had walked into JK Technologies 9 days ago, no, 5 years ago when she discovered she was pregnant and decided to keep them despite everything, Beauty felt like maybe, just maybe, things might actually work out. The question was, what would working out even look like? Would she and Minyi become friends? Co-parents with separate lives? Something more? And what about his mother who had made her position clear? What about the public scrutiny that hadn't entirely faded? What about the children who were watching and learning and forming their own opinions about what family meant? As Beauty finally climbed into the guest room bed, luxurious, comfortable, and yet somehow still foreign, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were all standing at a crossroads. The press conference had bought them breathing room, but it hadn't solved everything. Minyi's job offer was generous, but would working together complicate things further or help them find their footing? And underneath all of it, underneath the practical concerns and the daily logistics of their new life, was the question no one was asking out loud. What happened when gratitude and proximity started feeling like something else? When the man who had been a stranger became someone she looked forward to seeing every evening? When his dedication to their children made her remember the man she'd met 5 years ago, the one who had made her laugh and feel seen before disappearing from her life? Outside, Seoul continued its endless nighttime rhythm, and inside the penthouse, a new family was slowly, uncertainly, courageously taking shape. But the real test was still to come. And Beauty couldn't shake the feeling that everything they'd built so far was fragile, temporary, one wrong move away from shattering completely. Would Minyi's commitment last when the novelty wore off? Would his mother escalate her opposition? Would Beauty find her independence again or lose herself in the process? And most importantly, would the children, brilliant, perceptive Chitty and Amara, emerge from this transformation unscathed, or would they pay the price for their parents' complicated history? Only time would tell, but tonight, for now, they were together. Safe, fed, warm, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough of a foundation to build on. Or maybe it was just the calm before an even bigger storm.